Hello, my name is John Reynolds. Welcome to Extraordinary Life Stories. On this episode, I'm talking with Stephen Fry. Stephen needs no introduction. Where to start? I can list so many accomplishments and career highlights spanning over 4 decades. Acclaimed actor, comedian, writer, and campaigner, to name a few. Stephen has been so courageous, talking authentically about his own mental health and doing so much to break stigma, paving the way as easier to tread for others to do so. I want to know how he's doing right now at this point in his life. And with so much already achieved, what is still on his to-do list? I'm looking forward to this conversation, so let's find out. Stephen, welcome.
Thank you, John.
Thank you so much for joining me.
No, it's a real pleasure. You're doing the Lord's work, as they say.
It feels like it. It's a passion, and talking to you is life highlight.
Ah,
Definitely. Who is Stephen Fry?
I wish I knew. We reinvent ourselves, don't we? I sometimes look back on how I was, even as little as 10 years ago, and think, who was that person? But it's much the same looking in the mirror and thinking, I just don't know who I am, which is exciting. It's an adventure. It's the old existentialist reward, which is not to know who you are. Oscar Wilde said, some people know exactly what they want in life. They want to be a judge or a grocer or a soldier or whatever it is, a dancer, and they become it. That is their punishment. Oh. But those who live what he called the dynamic life, or he sometimes called the artistic life, though he didn't mean you had to be an artist, they don't know what they want at any time, and that's their reward.
That's living, isn't it?
It is, that's the point. Yeah. And we're encouraged from the earliest time to believe that we must fit into some particular... Well, when I had a difficult time 30 years ago now, I remember cab drivers and people would stop me in the street and say, oh yeah, you went off the rails, didn't you? And I would not challenge it. And then I remember thinking, who the hell wants to be on rails?
Really good point.
Rails are just ruts, inverted. And we know that being in a rut is a bad thing. Well, being on rails is a bad thing. Get off your rails. Get off rails. We're encouraged to believe that we should fit some pattern. That's at school, but it's got worse than that. In the wider culture, we have to fit an identity.
Yeah, this is
new to me. Media, my generation didn't know this. We weren't called boomers. I mean, the phrase existed, but it wasn't used. Now there's generation Alpha, Z, whatever, Y, all kinds of millennials, and of course identities in terms of sexuality and all kinds of other things. And I instinctively rebel at the idea of fitting into anything that I'm told I should fit into. That goes all the way back to school. I remember there was a careers officer at my school. I don't know if you had one.
Did.
And
I didn't get on very well with him.
They came in, you had to fill in all kinds of forms. And he then said to me, what do you actually want, do you think, in life? I said, I want a job that is ridiculously easy, that needs no skill, no intelligence, no qualifications. And he said, well, what sort of job are you thinking of? I said, I'd like to be a school's career officer. Get out. Yeah. Get out. But I mean,
so there's comedy there already, defiance and entrepreneurialism.
And extremely irritating, as I always was, to everybody who tried to have control over me. But I do think, I mean, I wouldn't claim to be the most rebellious person. I'm not Sid Vicious or something, you know. I'm not a total rebel. Malicious. In fact, people look at me and they see establishment. I'm not wearing a tweed jacket today, it's too warm, but they see a tweed jacket. They hear tweed in my vocal cords and a sort of, oh, Stephen is, you know, and I am a member of establishment clubs, and I went to a private school that my parents sent me to, although I was thrown out of it. And I went to Cambridge and, you know, the BBC. And I have belonged to an enormous number of establishment clubs and institutions. I enjoy that because I've never felt that I belong. And I think that's been the story of my life most of all, is that I don't fit into the world, or at least I don't feel that I do. So I join every single club I can. When I was young and I had every credit card it was possible to have, I opened this concertina of things. And I still, so it's a very long answer to your question, is I don't know who I am, but I'm very happy that I don't know who I am.
It sets so much context, because like for school, I basically was, we were all groomed to effectively go into the workforce to get a job. And yet that didn't work for me. And I didn't get inspired at school because I didn't want to get a job, because I knew I wanted to do different things, which is exactly what I've done and continue to do. And God, flip that to you, but is there anything you haven't done? And I'm going to come to that. But when sitting here now with maturity and perspective, right now, who are you? Because there's so many things you've done, there's so many things you can reflect on, but it feels like there's a contentment, not in an arrogant way at all, because there's still going to be an evolution of Stephen Fry. But are you comfortable with who you are now, and are you happy?
Yes, I am.
Feels like
I am, John, yes. I'm content is a good word. I still love the fact that I don't know what I'm going to be doing next year. That a script will come in, an idea for a TV show, or I'll have an idea for a book or something, and it may work, it may not work, it may get off the ground, it may not. It's still very contingent and exciting, and I wouldn't have that any other way. I mean, that's why I tend not to stay with things. So I did that series QI, and we got halfway through the alphabet, because each series was A and B and C, and I got to the 13th, which is halfway through, and I said, that's enough. I didn't want to stay. I didn't want to be on a conveyor belt.
Do you deliberately stop doing things once you? So you're seeking a new challenge, and you're almost the comfort zone is my dream.
It's a privilege. Of course, sometimes I drive through, I'm in the back of a car, or I'm driving myself on the way to a film set. I mean, you go through the suburbs, and I look across a lawned little house, and I see someone mowing the lawn, or I see a family in a little basketball by the garage. And if it's Christmas, you see a Christmas tree. And I think, that's a life I've never had. Just an ordinary, happy family, sort of, just there with their lawnmowers and their nice house and 2 cars. and I sort of envy it. I think, that would be nice, but I know that I could never really live like that.
No, because there's a lot of people that like routine. You use that analogy of the tracks. There are people that need that.
Absolutely.
And I often say to people,
I don't look down on them at all.
No, not at all.
As I say, sometimes I envy them.
Nor am I. And actually, in some of my days when I don't know what I'm going to be doing next year, don't know what I'm going to be doing next week, and that can be stressful, it's also exciting. And I know good friends that are similar age. I'm 46, about to be 47. That have started to realise now that they've been following these tracks in their career path. They know exactly what they're going to be earning in 10 years' time, and they know when they're going to retire and what their pension will be. And you can see them doing exactly, you summed up with your expression, and it's like, oh no, is this life? Yes. The kids are about to grow up and go to university, and
the villa quite close to the golf course in the Algarve.
That scares me more than not knowing what I'm going to do next year, because I will be finding something that I want to do, if that makes sense.
And of course, it's a cliche, but it's a cliche for a good reason. People who stop, their health goes very often.
Classic retirement and then die on the golf course. But there's so much of this, isn't it? It's like needing to have the. I can't imagine you ever retiring.
No,
like, literally, like just because you're not fueling the grey matter. You're not being stimulated.
And it's a thing we don't sort of talk about enough, really, because it sounds a bit frivolous. But boredom. One has to escape boredom. Life can be boring if you don't have something to reach for. There's a great line by the Victorian poet Robert Browning, that a man's reach should exceed his grasp, or what's a heaven for?
Brilliant. That's also a growth mindset. You've got to keep setting yourself challenges. There are so many things you've done. What have you not done yet that, for whatever reason, just hasn't come your way, or you haven't sort of had the right timing that you really want to do?
Nothing really, to be honest, because I love a bit of acting. I love being in a sound studio doing an audiobook from time to time. I love doing documentaries, but not too often, one every other year or something like that. I love writing, so I've got a book coming out, and every year and a half I tend to write a book. And that mixture of TV and film and sometimes stage is just perfect for me.
Yeah.
And the writing. I think a lot of us have the Romans called it rus et urbs, the countryside rus as in rustic and urbs as in urban, and they were aware, because they were one of the first civilizations of that kind, that there was a part of the human spirit that loves to be in a city, and that's a metaphor not just it's not just the real thing, being in a city, but it's a metaphor for collaboration and being with other people, being surrounded by other people, being part of a team, being part of a group, having people shouting at you, whether it's in the army or in a theatrical troupe. It's the same idea. You're in a company. It
goes back to a tribal side of things, where you form your tribe and then you can be comfortable and flourish.
But there's also a part of us that loves to be out in the country, alone, walking, communing with nature, far from the madding crowd, as the poet Thomas Gray put it, which became a title of a Thomas Hardy novel, of course. But far from the madding crowd's ignoble strife. There's something the even tenor of their ways, and that's another part of one that likes. And I see that as being like when I'm acting, I'm always part of a group. There's the huge, 80, 90 people on a film set at any one time, often more, sometimes a few less. And you don't feel, oh my God, everything I do is entirely down to me. It's, part of that team. It's a wonderful feeling. But then when you're writing, it's entirely your own universe. And I think one of the most exciting things you can do is test the human brain. I don't mean by doing puzzles and things, but it is incredible how we underestimate its power. For example, if you're in the countryside and you're standing alone in a field, smallest little rush of wind can turn a leaf that's 100 yards away so its silver underside is shown. And you see it instantly. What was that? Something moved. Because we evolved to avoid being lunch or to find lunch. And so we see things. We have this amazing ability to focus on this tiny thing. But get on a train, and an hour and a half later, you're in Oxford Street, and there are 600 people in your field of view, all wearing bright colours, all making a noise. Shops got music coming out of them. You're on the phone, there's traffic, you're hopping in the street, you're talking to someone, you're waving to someone else who wants to speak to you, and your brain can cope with that as well. Totally crowded with noise and image, and your brain is perfectly happy doing it. And we don't really appreciate that. And taxis, I'm very obsessed with London taxis.
You've got one, haven't you?
Well, actually, I don't anymore, but I did for 30 years. I drove around. But as most people know, the London taxi driver has to undergo this extraordinary test called the knowledge, in which they basically have to be able to repeat by memory all these routes, hundreds and hundreds of different routes. It starts with Manor House to Gibson Square. Manor House is up sort of north on the North Circular, roughly, or just a bit before it, and Finsbury Park, sort of that area, and Gibson Square is in Islington. And they learn the route, so they make appearances, they have examinations, they go in. Now, it's a lot of knowledge, this knowledge thing, more than a lawyer has to learn to get a law degree, or a doctor to get pass their anatomy. It's a vast amount. And the people who do it are taxi drivers, and he or she are very likely to have left school at the youngest possible age and probably been told, yes, you're not very academic. It's an insulting, meaningless phrase. And then they do this thing because they want to be a taxi driver. And they discover their brain is capable of the most astonishing. That's memory. And a lot of cab drivers, therefore, teach themselves Italian or the form book for racing, because they realize that their brain has all this power. And the problem with so much in our education system is that it's a way of proving to people their levels of inadequacy. You can't do that. You can't do that. You failed that. But you can just do
a lot
that.
of judgment, isn't there? A
lot of
assumptions.
judgment.
Bit like the careers. I just didn't show an interest. I didn't know what to ask, so I was actually just sort of
very few children are told you are extraordinary, and yet they all are.
Yeah.
Of course, some seem more extraordinary because they're quicker at learning, their language facilities are better, or they do maths problems more quickly. And that is somehow privileged, and they go in a fast stream and they But that's not the point. The point is everybody has an extraordinary thing between their ears that is capable of amazing and remarkable. And
how do you encourage that then? Because you're an inspiration. Like you are someone that has just decided I'm going to do it and done it. And there's plenty of things I'm sure that haven't worked out for you, but we all know the ones that have. And I make that point that that there's to be able to try to do something and to succeed, you're going to fail along the way.
Yeah,
but you have then found the things that you excel in. And what I sort of love about when you first sort of answered that question was that when I asked you, what have you not done? You're doing the things you love, and you're doing the things we all want you to do, and you're really good at, which goes back to that contentment. So actually, I love that, hence being happy right now. But to someone that could be at a young stage of their life, or even at a sort of career crossroads now, what do they do to just get off these rails and actually kind of go, okay, because there's a fear, isn't there? There's a fear of the unknown, which you would say is a good thing. But how do you take those steps to kind of go, okay, I'm going to break tradition. What would you do?
Well, I suppose the first thing is to recognize the power of your mind to do remarkable things. We favor the kind of things that I like, and the kind of things that I find not easy, but welcoming, like literature and art and language. And so if people don't have that, they think, oh, I've got a disadvantage because I don't express myself as well as some people. But look at what you can do, and when you do express yourself well. For example, I mean, there are a lot of young people who know an astonishing amount about cars, their football club, fashion, things that are looked down on perhaps because they're not intellectual and academic, but actually are an example of how, with enthusiasm and passion for a subject, it's no work to learn about it. So I've spoken to children, girls who are really fascinated by fashion, or boys who are fascinated, like fashion, and they will talk about all these things that I know nothing about. I say, how do you know all that? And they say, well, just do. And of course they do, because that's exactly how the mind works. And for some boys, it might be football. They'll be able to tell you everything about Leyton Orient. You go, wow, how do you know this? Again, they just, or it might be Second World War planes.
There's been a disconnect though, isn't there? And I think social media might be joining us up more now in a positive way, actually, where the person knows everything about Leyton Orient, has no concept of how to make that the kind of the ikigai, making money out of it and feeling fulfilled and sharing, as well as sort of ultimately enduring their passion.
Yes.
I think social media has given a lot of people an outlet, sometimes not for the best.
No.
I think Mr. Beast is the most watched on YouTube, and you're like, but the point is that it's resonated with other people that have then chosen to subscribe and watch. So I think what you're saying, which I really like, is that actually people have got a passion and a knowledge for something. Just try and maybe then work how you can build that into a business.
Yes.
How you could monetize that, and make that more of an opportunity rather than just doing a 9-to-5 employment.
Yeah, I think there are. I mean, the most crucial element. I compare it to food. Why would someone be overweight? Because they eat a lot, because they're hungry, because they're greedy, as I am. Why do people know a lot? For the same reason. They're greedy for it. The word we use for that is curiosity or passion.
Yeah.
That you are driven towards something by your passion. And sometimes what you're driven towards is not on the list of sensible things according to society.
Yeah, you are what you feed your mind.
Yeah.
Right? So
and so you end up instead at a call center or in an office where you're not really passionately engaged with it, because that seems the sensible thing to do, whereas your heart is somewhere else. And it's very easy for people like us to say, follow your heart, because but the person has probably got something like a student loan or goodness knows what else, and it's not
the pressure of school fees or whatever it is, the mortgage. Yeah, I get that. But I think if you're naturally trying to aspire to do that, and you have that thought process, then at least you're on the right trajectory, and you'll work towards it, like almost like a manifesting.
Yes.
If you're just on those rails and you're just like, this is my life, and that will be your life, and that's probably the key message here, is that actually just start thinking, start looking, because then you'll open the doors will open for you.
Yes.
I really liked it when you talked about being out in I really parallel. I live in the New Forest. I spend a lot of time in London.
Thing.
And you're so right. I'll be out for a walk, and kingfisher goes by, whatever, and then I'm in
Packham.
Yeah, exactly. It's that world, right? And then I come into Oxford Street, just as you say. But I think you need to immerse yourself into diverse situations to cope with that, because you can see some people that come to London for the first time, it's just like, it's too much. I've always known it that way. But what works for you with all the things you've done and still do for your kind of mental fitness, if you like, as well as, it sounds like walking's a big thing for you, but is that where you get a lot of your stimulation as well as the physical exercise?
Enormously, yes, absolutely right. There was a painter, early 20th century painter called Paul Klee, K-L-E-E, and he said something that I absolutely love. When he was asked how he got an idea for a painting, he said, I take a line for a walk. And that's how most of my ideas come, in the literal sense, go for a walk, but also you take an idea for a walk. You walk the idea as you walk.
So you stretch it.
Yeah, you
bounce
just, so
it
whether
around.
it's a story, you think of a person, someone who hates their brother. Oh, what would they do? And then you just, you keep going with it, and you think, no, that's not going anywhere. So you go for another walk with another idea.
Because you're getting natural endorphins, you're away from everything
right.
else, and then your creativity.
You've got green, you've got the seasons. I mean, even in the middle of London, I like to walk in Regent's Park a lot. Even that, which is a planned garden sort of park. It's hardly a wilderness, but nonetheless, you see the seasons come and go, and it's just moving. It's very, very, the older I get, the more emotionally stirred I am by the sight of blossom coming out at springtime. I just find it beautiful. And actually, I don't know if you remember the lockdown, but that when it began in March, it's turned into a spring that was particularly gorgeous.
Yes, the best weather. I think probably kept the country going, particularly
Absolutely.
the UK, right? Because it was just incredible weather.
And obviously not everyone was able to go out for a walk, but it was usually possible, even if it's just the streets of a city where there are trees, you were able to watch things and hear the birds, and I think that kept a lot of people sane and reminded people that that simple act of walking in nature and engaging with nature. I think that's has
great.
a cascade of good.
Definitely, and talking about COVID, talking about mental health. When I talked to so many different people about the fact that I was going to be talking to you, and there was all sorts of things that were talked about. But one of the things that just was a constant and consistent message was authenticity and bravery, particularly just about the fact that, talking about mental health, you've just been a trailblazer and open about your own mental health at all times. Was that a deliberate decision, or did you almost have a crisis, and because you're so well known, well liked, and in that public eye, you just felt, this is what I do, and maybe it helps others? Was there a conscious thought there?
Yeah, and I think there is a sense that keeping things secret is bad for oneself as well as sort of morally perhaps wrong, and being open is a good way to live. And I'd already experienced that with what now seems like a very minor thing almost, I'm glad to say, but at the time was quite tricky in the public eye, and that was coming out sexuality.
Sure.
And that was in the 80s. I was still in my 20s, I think.
But so many people kept that bottled up
Yes,
at that
they
time,
did,
right?
and it was very rare. I think Ian McKellen was about the only actor who was known to be gay, who actually was open about it. Surprisingly rare. And so when, I had a mental health crisis in the early 90s, a really serious one, and started to come to terms with it and investigated myself and spoke to doctors, and then made the decision that I would make this film about my particular condition, bipolar disorder. it seemed a natural thing to do, and I was very surprised by the fact that it hadn't really been done, and that no one had. I mean, there'd been books. People had written books. Darkness Visible was a remarkable book about mental health, and Redfield Jameson, an American academic, really extraordinary. She's written about it. She's also one of the most important doctors in America. So she is both a practicing clinician and someone with very, very serious bipolar disorder. And she's written really well on it in the 80s and 90s and continues to. But otherwise, there wasn't much out there, especially in the public accessible way. There were books, yes, but there wasn't someone talking about it. So it just happened to time well with the age. So in the early part of this century, I made this two-part film, and I got this extraordinary response from people, and even from doctors, saying, you know, thank you, and this is important. And I was asked to be an honorary fellow of the Royal College of Psychiatry, which is an amazing honor, and I'm president of Mind, the mental health charity. And so I found myself, but it's really important to state that I'm not an expert, I'm not a doctor. It's not for me to tell people how to help their mental health, especially if it's serious, because it can be very serious. At the time we're talking to each other, one of my heroes from 20 years ago in cricket, Graham Thorpe, a fantastic batsman, he died two days ago, and his family released the news yesterday that he took his own life. I'd known that he had suffered from depression. And one has to remember that in an age where we talk a lot about mental health and mindfulness and anxiety, that there is a difference between. The way to think of it is like our physical health. The technical terms are exogenous and endogenous, but we'll call them from outside and from inside. If you're physically ill from inside, like I was a few years ago, I had prostate cancer. That comes from inside. But then last year, I walked off stage not knowing there was a 6-foot drop onto concrete, and I broke my leg and my hips. And now that came from outside. That wasn't ill health from the inside. It's what's known as trauma. It's a physical trauma. And you go to a hospital and they fix your leg. It happened from outside. The cancer happened from inside. Now with mental health, it's the same thing. You can have a mental health crisis that comes from outside. It might come from bullying, abuse, something in your past, something that's happened to you, something that's currently happening to you, something that's caused and triggered a sense of unwellness. Or, as in my case, and as in the case of Graham Thorpe, who we're talking about, the cricketer, you can be born, it seems, with a condition, what is known in medicine as a chronic condition. Chronic doesn't mean serious. It means it's permanent, it's there all the time, through time, chronic, like chronology. It gets misused a lot. People say, oh, I've got a chronic headache. No, you haven't. You've got an acute headache, that's completely different. And so asthma, diabetes, especially type 1 diabetes, these are chronic diseases that people have, that they live with. Bipolar disorder is similarly a chronic condition that you are born with. It may be genetic, it may be caused by some trauma that you're unaware of, but it's not, in that sense, exogenous, coming from the outside. It is something that people have. Schizoaffective disorders, that is a simile, it's a chronic condition. Now, these are separate from, I get anxiety because I'm worried about my exams. I'm not looking down on people who say they've got anxiety because of their exams. It's serious, and it can cause all kinds of unhappiness. But it is very different from having essentially a disease, from having bipolar disorder or schizo disorder, or chronic anxiety, a real sense of it. So it's particularly important, I think, that people try and think about whatever mental health issue that is affecting them, and think about whether it is something that is like not being physically fit, comes from outside. that you can cope with yourself by trying to help your mental fitness? Or is it actually something that needs a doctor?
Yes.
Because one of the things you have to say is that mental ill health can be so serious. Really, it can ruin lives. People with severe bipolar disorder or schizoaffective disorder can end up losing their families. It's very common not to be diagnosed with it and to feel these swings in mood that are huge in case of bipolar disorder, from high, manic high, to terrible lows. And the easiest thing, if you don't know that you've actually got this condition, is to try and regulate it with alcohol or drugs, because they can bring you down a bit if you're too high, or they can bring you up a bit if you're too low. And
which only makes it worse.
Yeah, it's known as self-medication, and obviously it brings its own problems, addiction, and families lose patience with people, and they end up on the street. And I've been into hospitals in the East End of London where you watch the mental health teams every night dealing with the most tragic and horrific cases of mental health disaster. And this is the sharp end. This is the equivalent of a cancer ward, or, this is serious, life-threatening. People in this condition don't live long lives. It has a high, as doctors would say, morbidity rate. So to confuse that, and again, you mustn't think that I'm looking down on people who have a less of a problem than that.
I don't.
But it's important to remember that distinction, that the real mental health crisis that is affecting us, and it can also mean that dangerous people are out in the public, as we know from Nottingham and Southport, and God knows, the most horrific possibilities when people's mental health is not attended to properly. And obviously that's both a political and a structural issue that has to be looked at. On top of that, there is the crisis that is affecting particularly young people who've grown up with social media, grown up with the bullying and the sense of inadequacy, the sense of loneliness and frustration and failure and fear that comes in this whole world of social media.
I'm in the trenches with that. I've got 13 and 14-year-old daughters, the number one search engine for mental health questions now is TikTok. Yeah, and I didn't even mean to interrupt you because I'm learning so much from you, and sharing this is a privilege. But you talk sense and you come from a position of knowledge and experience. There are, I believe, over 80% of the mental health answers, if you like, on TikTok are from influencers that are more or less being paid by TikTok to give out information, which is misleading, it's wrong.
Yeah, that is such
And then you wonder why we're in this crisis. I think the NHS, not the NHS, the police call-outs, the majority of the police call-outs now are dealing with mental health related issues. They're not trained to do that. They're coming out and it's a mental health basket case or whatever it might be, and then they're going, it's horrible, a crisis, right?
And I sometimes am asked to go to schools and talk about things, and it can be about books, or sometimes AI, which is a subject I'm very interested in, or mental health, and sometimes in the Q&As afterwards. And a few, 10, 15 years ago, I used to it became apparent that there's this epidemic of self-harm amongst teenagers, girls and boys, cutting themselves, hurting themselves. And I don't remember this at school at all when I was young. I can't remember a single person in my school.
Me neither.
And I at first thought, well, you go to a comprehensive in Brent Cross, say, in London, and it's quite an area of some disadvantage, a lot of pretty tough situations, and the kids there, maybe they don't have a father, maybe there's drugs in the family, maybe there's abuse of all kinds, and there isn't support and nurture, maybe that causes it. But I discovered that literally Eton College, the most exclusive. And so I was talking there once, and I said, no, but obviously you probably don't have that issue of self-harm. And they went, of course we bloody do. Oh God, yes. In their Etonian accents. And Bedale's a very exclusive school as well. And we were talking there, and I was saying, God, lots of it. So it isn't just kids who come from obvious disadvantaged families. The way that the sort of image I put of it is, as we know, all our rivers and streams in the country are polluted. A lot of our air is polluted. But our culture, our society is polluted. And the children are breathing the pollution of social media and of this idea of what it is to be a success, this absolutely skewed version of it, both physically, this pout and sucked in cheekbones look for girls, which is so revolting.
Well, let alone filters. That's a whole nother conversation, right?
And for boys, all kinds of confusion about who they are, what they're supposed to be. And
it's a confusing time for a man
very,
in particular, right?
Very confusing.
Yeah.
And of course, some people rise to the top. As you say, there are these influences, these people, how can I never be one of them? And there is the bullying and the sense of, you literally read about children taking their own lives or attempting to take their own lives because they didn't get any likes on something that they posted,
which is a judgment. So the whole thing is about comparison,
and
which
it's
you've already
pollution.
touched on.
It's a kind of pollution of young people,
and it's only that they're
breathing bad air, as it were. You know what I mean?
There's no restrictions.
No.
There's no. So my point being, use your terminology of pollution. It's not like we're turning it off, not like we're recognising it. And actually, someone I filmed with on this program, Professor Dan Nicolau, Harvard professor. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. I'm sure you are. You probably actually can elaborate. The studies he's doing showing that inflammation, physical inflammation, caused by doom scrolling and comparison, particularly in adolescent girls. Her hair's nicer than mine. She's got a lovely boyfriend. The whole, all this comparison, and then they go to sleep with that in their head, so that whole thing is manifesting into negative. That physical inflammation is equivalent to the same as smoking.
Yes,
and the physical inflation from leukemia. That is terrifying.
It's two words. It was 2 words. It started with Facebook, and they all do it. Simply 2 words that the algorithm is made to chase: maximize engagement. Now that sounds like an innocent thing. You've got a service like Facebook, and we're going back to 2007, 8, 9, 10. It's suddenly realizing, gosh, 100 million, 200 million, 300 million. Look how many people are now members of this. And we can advertise them. How do we get most people like, let's maximize engagement. So people, the more they use it, the more they watch it. To be kind to Zucker and everyone else, maybe they didn't see that by saying maximize engagement, it would find something extraordinary, that the way that the algorithm discovered you maximized engagement was anger, outrage, fear, all negative, powerfully negative emotions. That's what drives you. If they had said maximize happiness, the algorithm would have found something completely different. It would have been less money. It would have been less money for the advertising because they wanted to maximize engagement. Engagement means looking at adverts. It means clickbait.
Which creates the addiction.
Yeah. And what we didn't know about our species was that it's outrage and fury and resentment that maximizes our engagement. That's what makes us look far more, and we're all guilty of it. I mean, we vaguely knew it through newspaper headlines that shock, scandal, disgrace is going to catch our eye more than fluffy niceness. So we're all part of this, and none of us is exempt, as it were, and we get sucked into that doom scrolling. But we should be aware of the fact that it can be changed, and it has to be. There has to be a noise made. Schools are beginning to ban phones. That's a good start to get unplugged. I mean, if you and I were 15 now, I'm sure we would look at kids in the playground at break, on their TikTok and their Snapchat and think, how lame.
100%.
And we would say, hey, do you know, in the 1960s, they used to have these machines called duplicators. Let's do a magazine using a duplicator. We won't use any computers at all. And let's only use real old-fashioned phones with dialers. I had a godson who was on holiday with his girlfriend in this old house in Cornwall, and it had a phone in it. And he called me on his mobile. There was no signal in this house. So he walked in, his girlfriend walked to a pub about 2 miles away where there was a signal. And he called me and said, how do you work the phone? Because it doesn't seem to work. There's one in the house, but it's one with the dialing.
Yeah.
And I said, well, dial the number, you put your finger in it. He said, yeah, I've got that. I dial the number, and then I pick up the thing, and there's nothing there. I said, no. Okay, you have to pick up you have to pick it up first and listen to a thing called the dial tone. He said, well, what? And I was laughing, but I thought, well, why would he know? But what incredible fun if you were 15 to live an an off-grid life, an unplugged life, using all these fabulous old tools. You'd be the coolest people in the school.
100%.
And I had this idea. I was going to write a TV series about it, in which this kid comes to a school and completely changes the school. And it starts with the teacher saying, and I'll need those essays in my inbox by 6 this evening. And he puts his up and said, what's your address? And he says, well, it's so-and-so at the school. No, I mean, where do you live? So I'm not going to tell you where I live. Well, how do I give you my essay? So you put it in my inbox. Well, yeah, where's your post box? I said, no, your email.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't have email. What? No, I don't have email. You don't have a computer? No.
You just whittle it
I said,
down.
oh, we have a scheme if your parents can't afford to buy. No, my parents are quite rich, actually, but I just don't have a computer. Well, you must have one. You're telling me I have to have a computer? And why can't I just write my essay and give it to you? And anyway, they all stare at this kid, think, who is this ridiculous child? And so the teacher said, well, all right, then you'll have to hand me it physically.
Which is what we all did growing up.
We all did, our generation, of course. But, and then he starts basically influencing everybody. They think this is actually quite a fun way to live. It's really enjoyable. And I think it just takes that. It would just be the balance would just shift. We come to a tipping point now where the uncoolest thing in the world is Snapchat and Instagram and TikTok. And they are just boring, and we know they're harmful, but they're also vapid and shallow and silly.
They achieve nothing. Like Snapchat is nuts, because you can see, going back to my two daughters, that they feel the need to keep these threads going. So they'll spend time replying to people just to keep what they call a chat continue. And some of them are a year old. And for me, it's almost like, as a dad, should I just be taking the phones off of them out of principle to break that, so that you actually have, but
you want them to discover how uncool it is. And
I think going back to, like that then is like, we get them out for a bike ride, we're doing stuff, we go and do things where for big chunks of time where they are just removed from it. The challenges.
Jonathan Haidt, have you read him?
Yeah.
Yeah, The Coddling of the American Mind. He's got a new one, but that point about bicycle rides. His children now
it's always been important to me. No, they don't.
There's this terrible fear that it's a transmissible disease, fear as well. When a parent is afraid for their child, the children pick up on it, just as dogs and horses do, It's something we do as animals. And not to let children go out on bicycle rides together, not to let them just, experience, because you think there are monsters out there. But there are fewer sexual crimes on strangers than there've ever been, in fact. I mean, but we read about them, and they're awful, don't get me wrong. You've got to train your children not to take sweets from strangers and all the rest of it. But the chances of them being abused are always from within their own family and from someone who's known. Very, very rare. And as long as they're in a group and they're sensible, let them go, let them travel, let them go on buses on their own, let them go around and enjoy and find out what life is.
That's exactly where I am now, encouraging them to. And the first time that Lily went to go to Southampton on the train, she went the wrong way. She got on the wrong platform. And we've been on the train with them as parents, but because she's always had me to say, this is where we're going, she's on autopilot, probably on TikTok. That sounds terrible. And then when she's done it for herself, she didn't like that experience. She only went one stop in the wrong direction and worked it out, but she won't do that again. You need to, I think the expression is like helicopter parenting, isn't it? And I have been guilty in younger years of trying to mollycoddle and smooth out. And then I think with that maturity and perspective, where some of my best character traits and what's made me a better, more resilient person has come from when things haven't gone right, and I've needed to learn it for myself.
And
so I'm probably flipping the narrative. I'm probably quite hard on the girls now, but it's like it's that whole like I'm coming in a bit late, saying work it out for yourself, and I think that's really healthy within reason. I'm not
learn to swim in the currents of the world.
But something you touched on, and I'm going to probably make you smile now. But this sort of, you mentioned Gen Z, Gen Y, Gen Alpha, and so on. But anyone I speak to, sort of younger than 20, and I mentioned I'm going to be talking to you, Harry Potter.
Yes.
And I've not been on there. I've watched all the films, but I never became, I guess, like a super fan. But it's just it's a national treasure, and so are you. The marriage is amazing. But my question to you, which was right, is when I first started doing TV stuff, and so when I would listen and watch myself back, and I remember this from a young lad as well, I didn't like the sound of my own voice.
Yeah.
I had to get used to that. You have the most beautiful voice. Are you aware of that? Do you have like comfort with that and almost pride in it? Because you can be dramatic, you can be comforting, which is why the Harry Potter something comes to life, and it needed, right? But I can't imagine anyone else would have.
Well, that's very good of you, and I mean, I suppose it is true. I've said this before, and it always sounds like a kind of false modesty or fishing for a compliment or something, but I was so bad at everything at school that you wanted to be good at. I mean, I was smart academically, but that wasn't how you were judged or how you know. I couldn't swim until I was like 12 or something. It was just embarrassing. I couldn't basically run without colliding with a tree or tripping over the white lines on the tennis court. You know, I mean, it was just hopeless. Couldn't catch a ball. I was the kind of uncoordinated person who would clap their hands at it instead of, just coolly catching it and plucking it from the air like an athletic person. I couldn't sing, I couldn't dance, I couldn't paint or draw. So I just was, and I discovered that the one thing I could do was tell a story and use language. And I used to write compositions and stories and things. And there was a boarding school. I was sent away very young age to a boarding school. Like, it wasn't Hogwarts, but I was 7 years old, so I was very young. And you arrive at this place and as I say, discovered I was hopeless and was laughed at for being, I won't use the word that was used, let's say uncoordinated, but you can imagine the words that we used to just how hopeless I was and falling over all the time and feeling clumsy and dreadful and not good at anything that boys were supposed to be good at. Until there was a music lesson. And the teacher wrote the word orchestra up on the board, and she was going to talk about the various sections of the orchestra. And I shouted out cart horse. She said, "Excuse me," and I'd seen in the word orchestra that it was an anagram of cart horse. Just the letters came out. It's just a thing I have, and I'm not unique in that. You see anagrams and things. There's something about words and language that deep within me has I have an instinct and a love and a curiosity and a passion for words. And I discovered that was my thing. And so it was Latin, and then I was taught Greek. And so and in the dormitories at night, I would read stories. Either ones I'd made up myself or, thrillers, Alistair MacLean was big at the time. So I'd read Where Eagles Dare or, whatever the books were. And people would just beg, another chapter. I'd be literally under bed with a torch. And it never occurred to me that this would ever be a way of earning a living exactly.
This goes back to following the passion. Though.
It does, doesn't it? And it was, for me, it was just the only thing I could do. In a way, the only thing that would allow me to be popular, because I would never be picked for a team in the sport or anything like that. So I'd always had this sense that I could tell stories and read, and I had a natural, easy enough way of being able to read so that people wanted to listen. When the Harry Potter thing came along, it was, my agent said, "Oh, there's a children's story." She'd only written one book, so she wasn't famous. No one had heard of them. She said, "Apparently it's very good. I'll send it to you." And in those days, that meant the paper, not an attachment with email.
Yes,
not a PDF.
Old school.
Yeah, exactly.
How it should be.
This thing arrived, and it was adult length. 80,000 odd words, and I thought it was going to be a children's story, which is oh, the cat smiled and the dog said, "I love you," the end. You know, that's a children's story. Then I started reading it, and oh my goodness, I thought this is good fun. So I went along to the studio 3 weeks later, and there was Jo Rowling who'd written it, and she was, a big fan of the series I did with Hugh Laurie, A Bit of Fry and Laurie, and so she started talking about that, and I was very touched and told her that I really liked the book. And when we finished it, I said, "That was damn good. I really hope it does well." She said, "Thank you." Well, actually, I've just finished a second one. I said, "Oh, it's going to be a series." And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "Good for you." I can't believe. Well, she says I was that patronizing, and I hope I wasn't. But yeah, it was an extraordinary thing to watch this transformation of her life and this phenomenon flowering, blossoming in a way that hadn't happened since probably Charles Dickens, when his books exploded in the Victorian world in their own way. It was remarkable, and each launch became a bigger and bigger event. And by the fourth one, it was the news at 6 and the news at 10 were saying the new Harry Potter book is being published and will come out, and they'll show children queuing outside bookshops and so on. And this had never happened before. It was
What a great thing to be part
it
of.
was remarkable.
How, again, just use that, the marriage is just synonymous. But that is, I think of Blackadder, I think of countless things, Blue Whale, just there's so many things. But that, Harry Potter, wow. It's
It is lovely. I mean, people obviously are at the most soft and vulnerable, and one hopes happy in their safe place when they're listening to a story.
Yes,
it's very primal. So people are very charming to me sometimes because they've.
Oh, absolutely. But the warmth, the respect I get from the people I've been talking to, knowing I'm talking to you today, has been massive. And actually, if you use the scenario here of what you did there with Harry Potter narration, it's been a phenomenal success. So much of what you have done has been successful. Sitting here now, how do you define success?
Well, there is worldly success, and one recognizes that. Obviously, it's clear that certain things you do haven't taken very well, a film that nobody saw, or there's a TV series you did that lots of people still remember and talk about, like Blackadder or something. So those are successes in worldly terms. And then there are the things that you yourself are secretly rather proud of and pleased that many people may not have known or noticed particularly. And you think, I did well in that. And I'm pleased with that book or that TV series or that documentary. I mean, we're all children. My mother, I'm happy to say, is thriving. And so part of it is like, when your parents are proud of you, it really makes a difference.
Are we all striving for that deep down, ultimately?
So. My father died a few years ago, but he was a very brilliant man. I always thought of him as a bit like Sherlock Holmes because he was very intellectual, very reasoning and logical and scientific. And he smoked a pipe and was thin, so he was quite Sherlock Holmesy. And when I started out after university doing comedy, he would go, yes. And then I would do something else, like a book or a documentary. He would go, "No, that was good." And I would think, "Oh, wow, I pleased him, how amazing." But he wasn't that interested in sketch comedy or things like that. He thought it was slightly beneath me, I think. And you'll never lose that sense of pleasing or not pleasing a parent, I think.
Yeah.
But it's like you with your children. And I don't have children, but I have 13 godchildren and nephews and nieces and things, and I'm deeply fond of them. And you realize with parents and with you yourself and these children is that it doesn't matter how clever they are, how skilled they are at football or playing the violin or anything. It's if you're picking them up from school, and you see them with a group of other children laughing and playing and think that other children like them. They get on well with other children. And you might see another child sitting alone on the step and think, "Oh my goodness, That poor child.
Heartbreaking.
What's going on with that child? Why isn't that child being? Why aren't they playing? But you realise that you want a child to be liked. It sounds like such a small thing.
Not at all.
There's a scene
Not
in a
at all.
wonderful Western called Shenandoah, and Doug McClure, not a very famous actor these days, but he was in his time, it approaches the great James Stewart to ask permission to marry James Stewart's daughter. And James Stewart's sitting in the porchway. It's a Western, it's sort of Civil War movie, and he's making himself a green cigar. And he says, Mister, I want to marry Laura, whatever her name is. And he says, do you like her? He says, well, gee, I love her. Well, that's not what I asked. I said, do you like her? It's not the same thing at all. And he thinks, he says, yes, sir, I do like her. Well, that's a good thing. You can marry her. And I remember thinking, that's actually very profound.
It is.
You've got to to be liked, to like people. Love is overwhelming and marvelous and powerful and everything that it is, but liking is a still small voice that matters all the way through life.
To the point where actually just really relevant to this whole conversation, social media, desperately, like you said, the worst case scenario when the child doesn't even get likes because it's the same word.
But social media can't like people because it doesn't know them.
No.
The reason anybody is liked is because they're known. You see them for who they are and you like it.
That's why the question from the film was so heartfelt, because it's like, okay, I do love her, and love can be for so many different reasons. Emotion, it could be an attraction.
Yeah.
Actually, do you like spending time with this person? You're going to go and walk through the fields together, you're going to have dinner together. It's really, I love that.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it?
You are so amazing to talk with. We're going to run out of time.
Yes, I'm sorry.
No, not at all. No, I meant as in context of there's so many things now I'd love to ask you, even with things that I still haven't. But just making time to talk with me today has been an absolute pleasure.
I've enjoyed it. You make
such
it
a
very
privilege to
easy.
talk with you.
Thank
you, Stephen. Well, ditto.
Carry on with this marvellous work you do.
Oh, thank you, and thank you for supporting. It's just absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, John.
Cheers.